Nvidia is launching a brand new GPU that you're probably going to be interested in, at least theoretically, because of the price. That's where we're going to get a little bit stuck. Looks like Nvidia is kind of hiding the price of this GPU. I'm going to tell you which GPU it is, when they're going to launch it, and the review embargo that was leaked is a little bit shocking, actually. We are going to see exactly why, and your thoughts on this may start to get a little bit interesting, so you definitely want to watch until the end of the video. The GPU that we're talking about here, no, it's not some crazy 4090 Ti. That's only for like a small portion of gamers. We're talking about the RTX 4070. Historically, the 70 series GPU have been pretty popular because they usually have some decent price to performance. And of course, even though you're not going to get the maximum performance, you can certainly get performance close to what was the maximum in the last generation. Case in point, remember when the RTX 3070 came out? The big sort of media hype was that it was going to take over for the 2080 Ti, which was the previous $1,200 flagship. So then you have a $500 GPU being as good as what existed just a few months before. What about the RTX 4070? First, this is when it's supposed to be coming. Supposedly, it's going to be around April 13th. Not April Fools, but April 13th. And the review embargo is going to lift, at least from the leaks that we've seen, around April 12th. But there's something very interesting about this review embargo. We don't know yet what the exact MSRP will be of this particular GPU. We can probably guess. I mean, let's take the 4070 Ti. That one is $799. So a lot of people got upset at that. It's way too expensive. You're getting good performance at 1440p in many cases, but you're definitely paying much more than you would have last generation. And as we've said before, there are some serious limitations to the VRAM and the memory bit bus at only 192 bits. The bandwidth is not enough as you start to push ray tracing and 4K. Some people will use this GPU for 4K. That's going to be the biggest difference between the 4070 and 4070 Ti. Even Hardware Unboxed recently tested the 4070 Ti at 4K and 1440p, and they found the exact same problems and limitations that I found in my testing in the previous videos. So that's that's a big YouTuber that kind of confirmed what I was talking about. But the big difference here is the 4070 Ti is $799. That's like 4K money territory. Even if you don't call it a 4K GPU, it's a little bit disingenuous because then you're basically following what Nvidia tells you. Nvidia told you 1440p GPU, but look at the price. Look at sort of the class of GPU. They don't really mesh together very well. And now let's hear a word from our sponsor, VIP-CDKdeals.com, a Windows 10 Pro CD key. Add to cart, you put in code CC20. This will also work on Windows 11. You want to go into your settings in Windows, change and adjust your CD key, click activate, and now let's go back to the video. 4070 is going to have a lot different of an audience because, okay, I'll give you that a 4070 is a lot less likely to be even thought about being used at 4K, just because most people for 4070, I would say the majority, let's say the enthusiast gamers, will be 1440p, like high refresh rate, and of course a lot of 1080p users as well are going to go for something like a 4070. There, it's a little bit more forgiven that the memory bit bus is not as good as it was for like the 3070 or 3070 Ti, even though as of right now, the specs of the RTX 4070, we think it's going to be basically a 4070 Ti, but a little bit undercut, meaning the same 12 gigabytes of VRAM, as well as the same 192 memory bit bus. It's just going to be in general a little bit slower of a GPU, which is expected since it's supposed to have a cheaper price. To get to the price, Nvidia, for the review embargo, this is something kind of weird that I haven't seen before. Let's say, I think April 12th, the rumors currently are, MSRP RTX 4070s will have their embargo first. That means you as a gamer, as a buyer, you're going to look at the MSRP price of the 4070 first, like when you make your decision. The non-MSRP RTX 4070s are going to have their embargo a day after. So basically, you're going to be hit with sort of the base bottom price of the RTX 4070, and then the real world price, which is probably the non-MSRP GPUs, is what you're going to see after. Something Nvidia has done a lot in the past is announce like an MSRP GPU, but then just release into the wild a lot more AIB GPUs that are way above the MSRP. So in their presentations, in the media hype, you'll read about the GPU being, whatever it is, $799 or $699. But when it actually hits the stores, it's going to be usually $100, $200 more, because those are the ones that are sort of like flowing out to the general market. That's something tricky that they can do. And given that they're making the MSRP GPUs have their review embargo first, they wanted to make, obviously, the best first impression, because if you're comparing the performance to a much higher price, let's say if you're looking at a Strix 4070, which will definitely be probably the most expensive one, you're going to be like, that's definitely not worth it. You can probably get a 4070 Ti for the price they're charging for that. And then if you look at sort of the MSRP GPUs, it's going to be a lot easier to say, all right, maybe that's not as bad because the price to performance FPS you're getting per dollar doesn't look nearly as terrible, but they don't have to sell you those MSRP GPUs. They can, release a couple into the wild just to say they did it, and then release mostly more expensive GPUs. So the problem here is the RTX 4070 is not going to be $499. We don't really have pricing information from Nvidia yet or any type of rumors, so we can just speculate. Let's see, the original 3070 was $499 and the 4070 Ti is $799, so it has to be somewhere in between there. Looking at how they raised the price by $200 for the 3070, I'm gonna sort of make a little guess here. I think they're going to raise the 4070 price to $599, and then that gives them room for all of the third-party non-MSRP 4070s to come in at like $699, $749, even up to $799. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like a 4070 Strix or one of the high-end models about the same price as a base MSRP 4070 Ti. That means that Nvidia did raise the price of the 4070 by at least $100 if this holds true for the base MSRP. But like I mentioned before, they don't have to sell that many of base MSRP GPUs. They can just sell the non-MSRP ones that are going to be very close in price to a 4070 Ti. So it's almost like the 4070 Ti gets a bit of a price cut and a big performance cut as well, because they're not going to perform nearly the same. So this is certainly a strategy that I think may definitely work. I mean, if Nvidia was a little bit more aggressive, they could price an MSRP 4070 at $499. That would call a lot of attention to it. That might be like a smart business move, because the media would be like, oh, they didn't raise the price compared to the 3070. It would kind of revive them from some of the backlash that they got for the 4070 Ti. I'm not sure if it would make business sense for them to do that, because remember, anything they do with the 4070, like at $499, that's going to squish a lot of GPUs in that price bracket. We're talking about 4060 Ti would then have to be cheaper. 4060 and 4050 would also have to be cheaper. And then there's a plethora of RTX 3000 still out there. I mean, I readily still see RTX 3070s for like $560 being sold today. So the pricing would definitely be a little bit shocking if it was $499. That's why I think the most reasonable, let me know down in the comments if you agree with my analysis of it, $599 for a base MSRP 4070, and then obviously $599 and up, including the price of a 4070 Ti for all of the AIB models, like MSI, Trio, Asus, Tough, Asus, Strix. We'll see that same sort of price tier and price gap as we see with the other GPUs. And then, of course, $599 for a 4070. I mean, you can stomach that a little bit better than you can probably the 4070 Ti $799. It's still definitely probably a little bit too expensive by at least like $100. But depending on the amount that they have, I mean, people are waiting for cheaper GPUs. So having the 4070, I mean, the power draw is pretty efficient. NVIDIA certainly has done a good job with that. I like to be objective and see all of the positive as well as negative angles. And then we're talking about DLSS 3. Some people may not like it and may think it's fake frames. I have been testing it a lot actually, and I think it's really good. In general, let's say you're playing a game like Hogwarts, Cyberpunk, Hitman 3, those type of games that don't really require a really fast latency, they do really well with DLSS 3. You see very little artifacting and the fringing, and mostly you get really good performance. So that's a big plus for the 4070 if you play those games that are supported. Not every game is going to have DLSS 3 support with frame generation. It's going to be a select number of games. And then looking at the VRAM, I can certainly stomach 12 gigabytes of VRAM and maybe not as much as 192-bit memory bus, but still a little bit better than on the 4070 Ti, which for an $800 GPU, unacceptable that they limited the VRAM that much. It's not just about the amount of VRAM, it's about the bandwidth and the speed. That's a little hidden factor, and a lot of people won't even notice it unless you push your GPU more, which with games coming out with ray tracing, path tracing, textures and very graphically intensive games, very possible that more people will run into these issues, therefore not making them very future-proof at all. It's weird because the 4070, if the price is too high, it's also going to start running into GPUs from RTX 3000, and don't forget AMD, of course. It has to stay far enough away from like a 6900 XT, which itself is down to like 600 and change, so that's a very fast GPU. And if you're talking about a 4070, you can theoretically have a 3080 Ti or a 3090, and the performance may be better in some cases, especially if you're playing at higher resolution and you need that faster memory. And if you get them used, you can definitely start to be pretty competitive with the price of a 4070. You're just going to be missing DLSS 3. But if Nvidia prices the 4070 more attractively, they can definitely, I'm not even going to say gain more market share because they have such a dominance over the market. Maybe that's why they can price it as they wish, but they can definitely sell a lot more of them. I mean, the 4070 Ti has been a little bit embarrassing in a way. Even the 4080, their high prices have kept them on the shelves. At cheaper prices, these GPUs would be much better. If the 4070 Ti was $599 like the 3070 Ti, I would never complain about the 4K performance because then that price bracket puts it into an entire different tier of expectation. But you give me an $800 GPU and it can't do 4K in 2023 adequately, then that's my beef with it. And the same issue is going to fall on the 4070 for 1440p. If the performance is way too limited and if the price is way too high, like close to a 4070 Ti, it's going to be definitely unacceptable. So they have to keep that price low for us to accept the type of performance that's going on. To me, these 70 class GPUs feel like they should be 60 class. Like the 4070 Ti should probably be a 4060 Ti, and then the 4070 should probably be a 4060. That's the type of hardware specs that I'm looking at that makes it feel like past generations had, especially with the memory bus and the type of performance that you're getting. But once again, if Nvidia did that, they wouldn't be able to sell them at these higher prices. The biggest proof that what I just said is right, look at the 4070 Ti. It should have been a 4080 12 gigabyte. Remember, Nvidia was playing games with the stack and the different tiers of GPUs. That's the most proof you ever need. They just had to reset it to a 4070 Ti, but they could have definitely gone even lower for like a 4060 Ti. But of course, that makes their whole plan and pricing structure a little bit nonsense because they don't need to do that. There isn't that much competition aside from the older GPUs in that bracket. Not even AMD have released something beneath the 7900 XT. So that's my early take on the 4070. We're going to see if it hashes out. Whatever happens to that GPU, is it going to be popular? Is the performance going to be good or not? I mean, we're around like a month away from seeing what some of these GPUs are going to do for the price. So very interesting to see. Remember to stay subscribed or subscribe if you haven't done so already to stay up to date on these GPU news items and analysis of the market. And I'll see you guys on the next video.